franchise hot seat and revisiting um, various franchisors and their business models and talking to them in depth about what happened in the last year and how they changed or improved their business model based on some of the advice or interaction that they had with the franchise hot seat panel. But before we do so, always, John, we want to hear
Yeah.
what's happening, what's new in academics and franchising.
Yeah. Well, we continue to attract students who want to earn a concentration in franchising, and that's great. Those students need to do internships in order to complete their studies. That's sometimes a challenge. Where do we find enough internships? And there will be 11 of them graduating in May. We're going to honor them April 17th at our advisory board meeting on campus, where it looks like we have more than 100 people coming to that
Oh,
event, the largest event we've ever had in terms of a board meeting. We've had 90 before with guests and with students, but more than 100 we haven't had before. So looking forward to that in the next week. Students continue to express their excitement about franchising. Yesterday in the classroom, I invited Aaron Rose to come in to speak to my franchise management and operations students. Aaron was the first student at PBA to register for a franchise
oh,
class.
that's terrific. That's
Yeah.
terrific.
And Aaron has worked for, I believe now, 4 franchise companies and is now on his own, trying to decide what he wants to do. PBA students are very mission minded, and this Gen Z population is mission minded. Whatever they do, it can't be just a job to make some money. It's got to change something, their family, their community, their church, state, whatever it might be. And Aaron is very much mission minded. He spent some time in Uganda and wants to go, maybe, possibly go back there to help a motorbike franchisor get his motorbike operation off the ground. So he's looking at some options right now. But what he conveyed to the students was, had it not been for franchising, I don't know where my career would have gone. He started in pre-med, realized he wasn't about money. He was more about impact. Then he got into entrepreneurship, but didn't really like that. And at about that time, we announced the franchise program in 2017. And that's where he landed. And he's very happy that he's landed there. So that was inspiring yesterday for my students
Yeah.
to hear that, and inspiring for me to think, wow, helped create this young man very early in his career. He spent a couple of years at Resi Brands, which is the franchisor of That One Painter. So he knows a lot about that business, and he knows a little bit about Richard's Painting, which we're going to talk about today. And that's what's happening academically at PBA. Other than we're still raising money to build our new business hall, which we did break ground for that. We're wrapping up the semester, so that's where people are excited. And on the 5th of May, a dozen students and a couple of faculty, we will leave on a 2-week study tour, beginning in Budapest, then going to Croatia, then ending in Athens, and coming home.
Very
So
nice.
that's going to be exciting, meeting a lot of franchise people abroad. That gives a terrific opportunity to our students. I also went out to California as part of Titus Center with the to go to Stanford, because they release the Latino franchise, or the Latino population career up. They track a lot of data about the Latino community. And while Latinos are very entrepreneurial minded, business minded, they don't show up well in franchising. And is this a matter of education, which many of the folks there believe that's the case? They just don't know what franchising is about, like most of the population of the world. They don't know what that means. So the Latino Franchise Association and the Latino Hotel Owners Association had a combined meeting where I spoke to them a couple weeks ago. I'm kind of losing track. weeks ago out there in Palo Alto. So met a lot of interesting folks in the hotel industry. That's generally that is a much larger
Yeah.
$1 million investment. It's not what my students are looking to do. It's not what most franchise prospects are looking to do. But interesting group, and I was happy to go out and speak with them. And now I'm leaving tomorrow for LA for the International Franchise Association's West Coast Expo, where I'll teach a couple of programs there.
Excellent. Very good. And always, if you're in the audience and you want to give John an internship to help him get qualified students for your franchise, give him a call. We've got some great programs.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about missions, Richard is on a mission to change the painting world.
Yeah.
So let's segue into that because, Richard, just give us a bit of an overview of your painting franchisor, and then we're going to jump right into what I think is, and what we were talking about before, was what the really unique and I think challenging, or challenging to the standard franchisor view is. Give us a view on your franchise painting, and then we'll jump into I'll call it the Gerber challenge.
Well, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and glad we can talk about franchising. It's something that I never thought I would be in, but here I am. Richard's Painting is very simple. We're just, we say we're your neighborhood painter, and that's what we try to be. We're not trying to be the largest, territories. We're not trying to be the biggest, painters. We just want to be the best painters in our area. And, when you do that, you get good quality customers and you can make good profits. So our franchisees are all over the place. Truthfully, we have, owner operators, we have people doing it part-time, we have people doing it full-time. So what's good about Richard's Painting is it's not a, one way only franchise. We have the outline of how to have a successful business, but if you want to do, millions of dollars in sales, well, we can do that. If you want to do, $350,000 a year and that you're comfortable with that, we can make that work. So, we fit a lot of boxes for lots of different people on different budgets and different, perspectives. So that's that part of it. I'm building Richard's Painting to be here for the next 100 years. So my plan is to grow it a little bit slower than maybe the conventional wisdom is going on in the current service world, where you start today and by the end of the year you have 100 locations. That's not Richard's Painting. We'll have 100 locations. We'll probably have 500. Eventually one day. But I figured I'm going to build 7 to 12 a year and continue on that pace and just keep building the business strong. So whenever we have a new franchisee, the system's already there for them to, jump right into, and we can give them each one the attention they need to be successful.
Okay. John, now I'm going to get you to recap the Michael Gerber challenge that we had talked about before.
Richard is one of our most interesting subjects. Franchise Hot Seat series, because Richard is very authentic. He doesn't, it's not that he doesn't take advice easily. He's got his own ideas first and foremost, and he wants to play those out. And if he's wrong, well, he's only going to look at himself in the mirror if he's wrong. He's not afraid of that. So part of the challenge with Richard is, when he says, hey, if you only want to do $350,000, yeah, okay, we got a place for you. I don't know another franchisor who will say that, because if I'm going to sell you a territory and you're only going to pump $350,000 a year out of it, when you could pump $2 million a year out of it, I'm losing money.
Right.
And the brand is losing money, and the brand is losing its presence. But Richard may be part of this. He's not a Gen Z, but he could be part of the Gen Z population, because they want to make a difference for people. and they don't care about the money as much. And that may be part of what we're talking about with Richard. Where, as Gerber will say, and many franchisors say, when you become a franchisor, you got to put down the paintbrush and you got to take up the franchisor's apron and become the franchisor. You can't be painting anymore. You can't be fixing cars anymore. You can't be doing the business that you've been doing for the last 5 years, 50 years, whatever it is. You can't be a plumber anymore. You've got to build and scale a business. You've got to get to 100. 2/3 of franchise companies never get to 100, but you've got to get to 100 because that's where private equity wants you to be, for one thing. And I don't think any of those things resonate with Richard, but let's ask Richard.
Well, it all resonates, right? I have to say that even though I have strong opinions about what I do listen, and I do watch, and I see what people are doing, and I try to look at different perspectives and different ways of doing things and try to fit what I think works for us, but take some of those other ideas. When I say, if somebody does $350,000, I'm talking about if you're in Dublin, Georgia, in the middle of nowhere, and you can do $350,000, that's an accomplishment, right? And if you're in the middle of Atlanta and you can only do 350, well, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's all perspective. I mean, as I look at franchising a lot of, territories, if you ever notice, it's all about the big cities. It's all about the big areas. We got to be in Charlotte. We got to be in Austin, Texas. We have to be in Chicago. Richard's Painting feels like, I want you to be outside of Chicago. I want you to be on the side skirts and be in the areas where maybe nobody else thinks it'll work, but yet they are very lucrative areas because of the same reason that everybody wants to be there. Well, they don't think about the other spots. So when you're not in those areas, it actually helps us, because the less competition that there is, the better pricing we have. When you're surrounded by 100 painters, yeah, there's a demand, but all that does is water down dilutes the pricing, right? And your profit margins can only be so good, because if the competition is charging $10 and you're charging 20, you can only get so many jobs, right? So if you only have 3 people charging 10 and more people charging 20, we're better off. So our business model works. That's, my point of saying that is our business model works in many different circumstances compared to many other franchises, especially in the service world, rely very heavily on volume of work, volume of business. And that's the way their business model is set up. Ours can work either way. So that's when I say those things, it's simplified, but it's more about, hey, you don't have to have a huge territory to be successful. I think that's I don't know what else you said, John, because I already forgot, but I want to remember so I could respond.
Yeah. One of the things that I always got a kick out of in the original franchise hot seat recording was that one of the panelists said that Richard needed to be more humble. And I think he was totally misinterpreted, because I think Richard's very humble, but he has his own.
Sorry. I got to jump in here. And on the panel, humble rating, what would you give the panel from 0 to 10 individually? Because I'm starting at 8 for most of them.
Right.
I'm going non-humble.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, they all meant well, but again, I think that I challenged them, right? In that environment, they were looking for people to just agree with whatever they said, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. They weren't expecting somebody to say, wait a second, I don't know if that makes any sense, and one of the exchanges was a simple Ray Titus, which was a good idea, and I'm sure many business people would think this is great, but he talked about having a contest to have somebody win painting their house for $5,000, a $5,000 value to paint your house. And he said, well, you may not, you might have to paint this house for free, but you're going to get all this business, contacts and referrals from this contest.
Yeah.
Right. And I, in my thinking, I thought instantly was, well, that sounds great, but it sounds like there's going to be, 5,000 people who can't afford to have their house painted. Because if they could afford to have it, they wouldn't be entering a contest to get it done for free. So I don't know how that's going to help me. And so I think that's where things, really started to go the wrong direction, because I challenged it, right? And I think, that's where the humble part came from. And I understand on their end, they're looking to say, hey, this person's coming here for advice and trying to learn and get better. And I didn't do those things. So, but again, there were many things I did take when I have a lot thought about Ray, and when he said to me, I need to make a choice, but am I going to be a franchisor or am I going to be a painter? Right. And I've thought about that. I think about it often, right? A lot. And I think, you know, I don't know why I have to choose, right? Like I feel like I'm always going to be a painter, but what he really meant was, if I'm going to be successful franchising, you have to concentrate on it more than I am, right? I can't be painting a house and trying to be a franchisor at the same time. So I totally agree with what he was saying. And so I have tried, to be better at that, right? But I think as a franchisor, and I think many people will attest to this, all that sounds great, right? Like you can do all those things and have all those talking points, but economics, I think, dictate a lot of how you proceed and how you're going to grow your business. In our business model, with me having franchisees at a more challenging starting, budget, my sales are not as high as maybe somebody who is going out and attacking people with greater sales at the beginning. So my inflow of money is less. So I've tried to figure out a way where I can still grow this business on a smaller budget, but still have the opportunity to help people, right? Like really, truly, I got into this franchising to help people, right? And when I say help people, I don't know why, but maybe this is wrong. But when I see somebody who has, is going to invest, $250,000 in a franchise business, they've been working pretty successfully. They probably have a net worth of $1 million, and now they want to start a franchise to become a business owner. I don't know if I'm helping that person. It doesn't feel like it in my heart. Like I'm saying, that's great, but you've been successful. Like it's not like you're unsuccessful. To me, I want to help people who are in the middle of that, right? Like, well, maybe they only have $40,000 to, in their whole entire life savings, and joining Richards Painting is literally going to change their life. Not just, hey, I'm going to start a business and see how that goes, right? Let's hope it works. These people are saying to themselves, this is it. This is my last chance. And I take a lot of pride in turning, people into somebody who could barely balance their own checkbook, who didn't understand how to, get into their email, right? Couldn't sell, food to somebody who didn't have any, right? And so and then seeing those people grow and become business owners and actually contribute to their community, get great relationships and make money. That to me is what I'm, really passionate about. But at the same time, can't be an idiot. You got to have people who can help grow the business in a different way. Where you have people with more disposable income who have more money to get started in order to grow the brand and grow the business. So I understand I got to have it both. I can't have it just one way. I'll never get to 500 locations with people who have $5,000 all the time, right? It's just not going to happen. There's just not enough of it. So for me moving forward, my biggest challenge is trying to accept the fact that, you have to be willing to accept all different types of people and help them. And now that I'm, fast forward, I have started working with brokers, consultants, and we've signed up a few of those. And I found out that I can help those people too. And it's not the negative that in my mind I thought it was.
Interesting.
Okay. So
I'm stopping because it looks like somebody wants to say something. So.
Joe,
but I could keep going.
I know you can. Let's go back to um, the business model here on volume, because I think this is one of the more interesting facets of the franchise, that your franchisees use employees, not subcontractors, to do the job.
Correct.
And in for example, in the cleaning franchise industry, it's all subcontractors all the way down, and sometimes back up. So and they're built to take on big jobs at the drop of the second, sort of like the restoration business. A lot of that, cleanup is done by not employees necessarily, but subcontracted people, because they're looking for that big hit from volume and in cleaning. You don't so much have a big hit so much, but you just have you're constantly being getting fired, as because that's a real churn business. And in restoration, you've got hurricanes and natural disasters, which really create the volume. But you were talking about having a speak to me a little bit about your how you came to this idea. Well, my franchisees are going to have employees and not rely on subcontractors, or at least a lot more employees rather than subcontractors.
Well, it's pretty simple. It's just that's what I've done since we've been
Okay,
patient.
well, good. Let's get rid of that.
But it's simple. But I will also say, Michael, that I've tried. Right. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't try.
Right.
I said, I would see, maybe 10 years ago, other, the biggest painting franchise in the country and is CertaPro, right? And so that's what their model is, and it works for them, right? And it's great for them. But and so I had jobs, and I said, well, let me test this. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's better than I think, and I'm just I'm just on the wrong side of it. And so I tried one job, I tried two jobs, I tried three jobs, and the challenge always was, it's a very simple situation. If the average job is going to be $5,000, that's what our average job is, and the way the subcontractor model works is you're paying the subcontractor half of that money, right? $2,500. That subcontractor has to have their own insurance, they have to pay for their own paint, and they have to do a really good job. So just the economics of it make that not work, because in order for them to make any money, they have to go quickly. And quickly usually means less quality, cutting corners, no attention to detail. And then usually the people that they're hiring are not that great either. So the relationship building is even challenged. And so after I tried this 4 or 5 times, the profits were no better, because every single time I had to go fix it. Right. I had to go make it better, had to fix a relationship. So I realized that this is not what we do. Right. And so it's very simple. When you hire employees too, I'm not Gen Z like John says, but I feel like I somewhere stuck in the middle, because I truly love what I do. And when I say love what I do, I love my employees. I love my relationships with the customers. I love helping people who need help. If I can go donate time or money to organizations that are around our area, that makes me feel like I'm successful. And so when you see people that work for you who are employees, we have employees for 10 years, 12 years. I have employees who are now franchisees, right? And so, but when you see them start and, they live in, not in the best situation, renting a trailer, this, that, the other thing. And then 5, 6, 7 years later, you help them be able to buy a house, right? They buy a brand new car. Then all of a sudden now you see their kids going to college, right? I mean, I can't tell you the pride, it makes me like emotional thinking about it now, because that's really the important part, and so forget the business, right? It's but when you can create that culture just by doing it, right? And so when you start to get franchisees who are going to hire employees, who are going to really cultivate relationships and really try to be the best at what they do, and the success just naturally comes with it. Like there's no magic formula, right? It's hard work. it's being dedicated, it's being willing to learn and change, and adapt to situations. But long story short, the subcontractor model just doesn't work in our business, right? Because we're trying to build a different type of business. Richard's Painting is more about the experience than anything, right? So when you provide a great experience to your customer, they do all the talking and helping you build your business without you having to do it anymore. And so that's the long story short.
But how do you then? I can understand that, as I, Richard, am going to go out and I know how to select these employees that sort of fit within what I want that, I want them to succeed, but maybe they've come from challenging backgrounds. I empathize with that. So I've got a path for them. And of course, if you've got employees that aren't churning, that's terrific, especially in, a service industry. But how do you pass that knowledge on to your franchisees? Because they're doing the hiring, not you.
Well, it's pretty easy, believe it or not. When I say easy,
Yes, I'm not going to believe it right off the bat.
We even got into this discussion when I was on the hot seat.
Yes, I'll bet you did.
hiring people, most of the time, most people are not willing to put the work in, right? Okay. Everybody just wants to hire somebody and they're going to be great, right? They just want to, I hired you, you should be great. And it doesn't work that way, right? You got to start by, like John has his DISC test, right? Where you're trying to find the right person, right? The right kind of person, their personality. Are they going to fit into this, what we do? Right. So that's the first step. If you're only going to be hiring people based on experience and knowledge of the industry, you're most likely going to fail. Because just because somebody may know how to paint or think they're the greatest painter, if they're an asshole, well, they're going to be an asshole to your customer. They're going to be an asshole to your employees, right? They're not going to be the kind of person that fits, right? So the first step is finding somebody who fits, right? And then you're going to have to realize that you're going to hire 2 to 3 people to find the right one, right? And then that is the average, right? Not every single employee is going to be great. You have to be willing to say that one didn't work out, and you have somebody else who comes in and all of a sudden that one's the right one. So it's when I say it's easy is you have to be honest with yourself and realize it's going to be work to find the right employees,
But in a friend, go ahead, Joe.
Mike, we have a question from our friend Warren Lewis at Ackerman for Richard. Wants to know if the franchise fee, the initial fee, is enough of a commitment. And he asked the question back when we were talking about taking on franchisees that weren't the $1 million net worth people, but the smaller net worth people. But is the commitment associated with the franchise fee enough to actually have true commitment? And since you talked about brokers and different things, why don't you answer it within that context?
Well, that's a great question, because as I'm thinking about it, I think that this thing of franchise commitment to the franchise fee is irrelevant, right? It's still the person. I mean, because I have had both spectrums, but the franchise fee is $39,950, right? Of that $39,950 average, I'm only getting half anyway, right? Because of, you're paying the broker, the consultant, you're working with another company who you're helping doing marketing and stuff like that. So the money coming to me is almost irrelevant. But for the commitment of the franchisee, I can tell you circumstances of both ends. Somebody on the lower end, they put $5,000 down, and that was like all their money, right? So they're committed, right? That was all they had. But at the same time, I have somebody who recently started and they paid the full franchise fee. They got everything they need. They have money to go. Types up his first estimate, and he changes the word estimate to quote. And so as soon as I look at it and I said, why did you do that? He says, well, a friend of mine who's in construction says that estimate seems like it's open-ended, and quote seems more, like it's not going to change. And
you don't mind if I change your system on you,
yeah,
do you, Richard?
on the first I want to say effing estimate, right? Okay. We had a conversation, we're past that, right? But instantly I was saying it doesn't matter the value of the person, like the money. It's about the commitment of the person, right? Like, and so instantly challenging what we're doing, right? And like I said to him, I said, listen, whether it's an estimate, a quote, a proposal, whatever you call it, it's the same thing, right? But and I said, and FYI, I don't know, estimate's what we do, right? And so it's if that's what's going to hold us back, then we're gonna fail, you know. So asking that question of does it instill commitment? I think the commitment is based on the person, not necessarily their budget, right? I think if you want to do this, no matter how much money you spend, you're going to do it. You know, I understand the thought process of saying that's I've read and seen many people say, well, if you don't charge enough of a franchise fee, they're not committed. So commitment to me is a weird concept, right? Because I just want people, and this is hard, and people have been franchising for a long time, more than I have. I'm always amazed by the amount of people who buy a franchise and don't listen. You know, I think we talked about this many times. Like it's amazing to me. Like me personally, I would never buy a franchise. I'm going to be that person. Like, why do you do that? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. But if you're going to buy a franchise, you have to commit to yourself and saying, well, at least let's do it. And then if it doesn't work, then maybe we can have a conversation and say, this isn't working. But at least let's do it the first time the way that, I said to do it, right? And so, franchising is difficult. It's not easy. This is, it's not like having employees, right? Like building a franchise business is so different. When you have employees, most of the time they're going to listen. They're gonna follow you. They're gonna trust what you say is right. Franchising is a little bit different. You have people, it's because it's their own business. It might say Richard's Painting on the van, but it's still their business. So they get stuck in this thing of where, yeah, they bought Richard's Painting, but I don't like that idea. I'm going to try this, and it's like, it's a weird thing. So I'm sorry that I'm long-winded about the commitment thing, but, I don't think personally the fee has anything to do with it.
Well, it's interesting. One of the most interesting things you said was that you would never buy a franchise. And I think many franchisors would sell franchise and they would never be a franchisee of someone else's system ever. And I see John nodding his head because we know a lot of the same people, and we are those two guys that have been in this business for over 30 years. So we've seen a lot. But it's not uncommon that in life that people won't follow a system, even if they've learned something. There are no checks and balances. There's no good guidance. People will deviate from the system. And that goes back to training and ongoing support and making sure you pick the right people in the first place. But you could pick the right people in the first place and not have those other things, and you will have great deviation. We have another question from Warren. He wants to know, and I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, what is the value proposition for people who work in these franchises? And he asked really what are the employee benefits? But I'm going to switch it around a little bit and talk about the proposition for people that are actually doing the painting and working for your franchisees. And since you operate, what's the value proposition for your employees?
Well, I think, for many of our employees, throughout our system, we have many, Hispanic workers, right? That's a very large portion of our workforce. And so for them, I think the biggest thing is consistency, knowing that they have somebody who values them, right? Who treats them well. There's many people who come to work for me and other locations where the biggest thing they hear is, wow, you're so nice. You treat us like, like human beings, not just like somebody who we just need you to work and like use you until we can't use you anymore. Right. We're trying to build, just like I try to build franchisees, I try to build employees, and I instill that in the franchisees to build your employees, relationship. And then you pay them well, you treat them well. You're changing their lives, even though they don't realize it at the time. But the right employees over time understand, that they have a good job. They have something that they can contribute to. And then now, many of our employees also, after they're working for, get experience, they learn how to do it, they start doing their own jobs, right, on the side. And I actually encourage it, because I believe when employees go and do their own work, they learn what the relationship between the customer, getting paid, right, all the dynamics that the owner goes through, they start to understand. So when they come work for you every day, they understand that this needs to be right. You're not going to get paid if something's wrong. And so, the return, the value proposition, gosh, I'm not smart enough for that. Remember, Joe, I didn't graduate high school, but
That's not an excuse, Richard. That's not an excuse, buddy.
But the value proposition for the employee is also the opportunity to become a franchisee on their own, maybe one day, right? I think that's something that I'm trying, with my own location is I have a new one starting in about a month, going to be my third employee starting his own franchise. And what I want to do is, as our franchise grows, is let our franchisees know, hey, let them know that this is an opportunity that they can grow from also. So I think that's something, I know other franchise models, maybe it's Domino's, I've seen was really big on, employees becoming franchisees. And I really like that. I feel like when you can start them at the bottom and work up and become better, and they know the culture, and then when they want to go out on their own, I want them to stay with us, not leave us, right? I don't want them to have to go start their own business. Hey, become part of Richard's Painting, right? Hey, for $5,000, out of your pocket, to get started with the business and have everything ready to go for you. And so that's what I think the value proposition is moving forward. It's not something that's like on the door, like we haven't said that's what it is at the moment. But in my mind, I'm trying to set it up here in our own location so that I can show others how it can be done in the future. We're just not, others aren't big enough yet to get to that point yet. But I think if we're going to use that value proposition, I think that would be something I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting you referenced Domino's, and Domino's is part of their standard. I don't know if it's true today, but you couldn't become a franchisee unless you had worked in a unit, and typically you were working in a franchise unit before they would even talk to you about becoming a franchisee. And going back to Warren's question about commitment, that's commitment. If your desire at the get-go is to become a franchisee and you have to work in a franchise before you can do it, at Domino's, that made a lot of sense. And of course, McDonald's is famous for its 2,000 hours. Before you can get approved to be a franchisee, not get a franchise, just to get approved, you have to work 2,000 hours. Wow, that's 50 weeks in a year, or 25 weeks a year for 2 years before you can even be considered to be a franchisee. And it may not be where you live right now. So, there's different levels of commitment. Now, McDonald's can get away with that because they have a waiting list. Chick-fil-A can get away with what they do. They have a waiting list. Domino's, I think, is actually trying to recruit now. I'm not sure that's the standard anymore. I think they have shifted to a different model.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no reason that Richard couldn't aspire to that type of level and say, this is what we want. We want people who understand all of the facets of the painting business, because we're not a volume dealer. We're not going to paint your house in a day, because paint needs to dry and cure and can't be done in a day, and anybody who believes so needs to take some chemistry lessons. So that's my snarky remark about that. But
I am curious about. I have a question of my own. I haven't asked one yet.
Go ahead. My guess.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Whose show is this anyway? Richard, you talked about the employee value proposition. You pay them well. In terms of the consumer proposition, are you the low-cost provider, the middle-cost provider? Are you the premium provider? in the marketplace for Richard's Painting. I want to get my house done, and I've got CertaPro coming in, I've got that painter coming in, and I've got Richard's coming in, I've got an independent guy. I got 4 people giving me bids. What's the decision process for me to choose Richard's over those other 3 options, 2 of them being a franchise, 1 just being an independent?
So yeah, so with us, it's pretty simple. We're never going to be the cheapest. We are definitely, we'll say premium pricing, because we believe we have a value, right? Our value is providing a great service, a great experience, and doing the best job possible. So that's the easy part. When our franchisees start out, many times they're being told their price is twice as much as the other person. Okay. It's not that our price is too much, it's that everybody else is too low, truthfully. But, so what we're trying to do is point out why we're different, right? And with all those other names that you mentioned, their marketing is based on, they're going to spread out in a large area. Richard's Painting is going to be very concentrated, right? So when people are looking at getting something painted, they're going to see Richard's Painting signs like, every half mile, right? They're going to see him on, 3 signs in 1 block, right? With many of the other brands, they're so spread out that they can never concentrate on one area. They're really spread out. So for us, the proposition to the customer is they've heard that we do a really good job. They see our signs all over. They know you have great reviews, right? All those things. But really, when we go out on our sales, our sales calls, for the most of the time, our franchisees are the salespeople, right? They are heavily involved in that part of the business, and people love to see the person who's, in the business showing up to the estimate. And then we teach being authentic, right? Just talk, right? You don't have to tell them how great you are. You don't have to tell them all these great things. Now you're going to talk about what makes you different, sure, right? But people, when you talk about sales, people are buying people, right? They're not buying the painting all the time. Sure, they've heard about you from other people. They assume that you know what you're doing. Now they just want to make sure, do I like this person? Do I like Michael? Do I like Richard? Do I like Joe? Do I like John? Whoever's the franchisee, in that business. And then once we do the work, and once, we get in the neighborhoods and we start to really build a reputation, we're winning way more because they know that we're local, we're going to do a good job, and they saw our sign right down the street, right? And so generally what will happen after the franchisee is there for 6 months, a year, many franchisees tell me they'll go work for somebody, and within 3 months they're calling them back again. A customer repeat business is really huge in our world, because once you acquire that customer, it's, all you have to do is just keep them, right? And so with painting, what's really great about our business in general is that, most people don't call us to paint the entire inside of the house, right? It's usually first we're going to paint the bathroom. Maybe we need to paint the kitchen cabinets. Maybe we need to paint the deck, right? And so you have customers who every year, maybe every 2 years, who are calling you to do different projects. And so I think I'm getting way off course, but the value proposition to the customer is that they know that they're hiring somebody who's going to do a good job, they can trust. And yes, they may pay a little bit more than somebody else, but they know they're going to get what they're paying for.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because there's really no way to be the best employer providing the best wages if you're selling everything at Kmart pricing, because look what happened to Kmart. Robert Forrest asked the question. He wants to go back to your franchise recruitment, and he wants to know what's working with attracting franchisees. Is it portals? Is it broker networks? Is it your website with your marketing on your website, or are you doing any kind of like targeted advertising? How are you recruiting people for Richard's Painting?
Well, up until about 3 or 4 months ago, it was mainly just doing biz buy sell ads, Google ads, right, to myself. and I would reach out and talk to every single person and try to get, that's how I cultivated most of our franchisees. And I reached a certain point where I said, I think I need to try to start to get a little bit a different type of franchisee. And so I started working with a group called Red Rock Franchise. And so they have relationships with brokers and consultants. And so, that's our next evolution. But I'm still doing my own Google ads and Biz Buy Sell ads. And I still, I have somebody who's going to be signing up next month who's, from a Biz Buy Sell ad, right? So I believe in marketing, whether it's franchising or painting. You got to do a little bit of everything. There's not one specific way to do it. The broker networks, and you go that route, you have to be funded, right? There's not a cheap way to do that, right? If you're going to be serious about it, it takes a tremendous amount of budget, right? So what I'm trying to do now is try to do a little bit of everything so that I can kind of capture different areas and different types of things, but still remain, tighter on my budget. And so, that's how I do it.
Yeah, well, we are getting into full Q&A session right now. Johnny Joseph out on the West Coast, another friend of ours, wants to know if the franchisees are required to purchase and utilize certain painting products, and what's the supply chain? How is it sourced? How we've got that set up? That's
a good question. So obviously every region of the country has specific paints that are popular in their region. Northeast, you go to Benjamin Moore, super popular. You go to Florida paints and different ones are popular down there. On the West Coast, I don't even know, to be honest with you, but there's other paints out there too. But our main source is Sherwin-Williams, because they have the largest network. They have over 3,000 stores, and they are everywhere coast to coast. So that's our main service provider as far as painting goes. And so, we work heavily with making sure we're using the right products for situations, and trying to get our franchisees to understand what works better here, what works better there. And so we work really diligently on making sure we're using the right products. Do I tell everybody exactly what to use every time? Absolutely not. But we have many ways to find out what to do. Sherwin-Williams is a great resource for, having they have their business is to sell paint, and we are buying paint. So they do a really good job of helping us, making sure that if I don't have the answer, they do. And so it's a very simple thing, and that's what's great about painting. Also, there's not much you have to carry, right? You don't have to have thousands and thousands of dollars of stock, right? We let Sherwin-Williams hold on to it, and we just go buy it when we need it. And so that's a great relationship. So we don't, you don't have to have your own paint. You don't have to mix it yourself. You don't have to do anything like that. We just go right to the source and make it really easy for the franchisee.
Now, on your Sherwin-Williams relationship, on their pricing, do they offer any kind of rebates to the franchisor? And if they do, what do you do with the rebates?
Well, I'm probably the only person franchisor who said I didn't want rebates. I wanted the best price for the franchisees. So what I've done is I told them, that I would rather have the franchisee say $5 more a gallon than I would have you pay me $5 a gallon and then try to do something with it. Right now, that might change over time, but at the current moment, I negotiated many paint products so that we have really good competitive pricing no matter where we are. And I think that helps the franchisee more than anything. It doesn't help them if I'm getting paid and then I got to figure out a way to help them back another different way to, how about if you just save as much money as possible on the paint, then it's going to be best for them.
Yeah,
I'm going to push back on that. I disagree with you there. You should take the rebate. And the reason I asked the question the way that I did and what you do with that money, it is always better to take the rebate, even if you give it all back to the franchisees in the form of a rebate based on the utilization, or putting it into the ad fund that benefits them and getting more business. But never leave the rebate money on the table and rely on the supplier to give you the best price. Get the best price and the rebate.
No, Joe, no.
Listen,
That's wrong. And
What-
it's very easy why that's wrong for Richard's case. He's
Okay.
got a supplier network. That franchisee or even employee or customer is going to go and find out the price of the gallon. They're absolutely easy to do, right? So when the franchisee, employer, or customer realizes that $30 paint can is really 25 from Richards, that's a win-win. That all Richard has to do is keep demonstrating, I really did get you that lower price, and we're going to make a lower price now. The more paint jobs you do, you'll see that come down even more. And that's a visceral committed, here's what you're getting. And it's all because you and this network are doing more paintings, and where there's no bureaucratic overhead for me to collect the rebate, distribute the rebate. And if I was distributing it, I'd be distributing it to your paint cans, right? So now I'm doing it. You can see it. You walk into any retail Sherwin-Williams, because they're retail, right? It's not like you've got a wholesale supplier. You got a retail supplier who's pricing that, and you can say, I'm beating that. Richard's painting is helping me beat that. So just say you're wrong, and we'll leave it at that.
I will not do that.
But-
Not now, you won't. I know you
I will
won't.
not do that.
Hey, Richard, I want to ask you a question, Richard, before we're going to run out of time soon. I know.
Sure.
Yeah.
So someone said to me recently, Richard's painting. That doesn't sound like a national franchise brand.
Yeah.
What do you think, Richard? I'm very interested in your opinion about this since it's your name.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because that's what we're aiming for.
Right.
We want people. I use this analogy a lot. You ever go to a restaurant, you go out to eat, and you're like, man, this is really good. And then you find out that it was a chain or a franchise, and you're surprised. You're like, it can't be that good, right?
No.
So we want to be a national brand with a local feel, right? We want people, when they think Richard's Painting, it's just the guy next door, right? And if they have in their head instantly, oh, this is a franchise, believe it or not, in painting, franchises have a negative connotation to it. They think it's cheap, fast, and no good most of the time, right? And so, and that, especially in smaller communities, maybe in younger generation, I think it's a little bit different. Things are changing in that way, but for the most part, I try to use that as an advantage. And the Richards Painting, which we use it as a tool, also, people, well, you're not Richard. So it's you tell the story of, well, what is Richard about, right? And so I think you can use it to your benefit. And I'll be honest with you, this is the story of Richard's Painting. Richard's Painting used to be called Nassau Painting Company. When I was in New Jersey, Nassau Painting was the business I took over. When I moved from New Jersey to North Carolina, I continued that name, and many people were confused. Nassau Painting, is that from Nassau, Long Island, Nassau, Bahamas? What is Nassau Painting? So I figured out that it was hurting me to have a name that didn't sound familiar, especially in a small area. So I just changed it to Richard because it's my name. And I don't know if it was by chance or because it actually worked. People thought, oh, he's been around for a long time. So it's actually, we do it that way on purpose because we want people to have that feel like it's something local.
And the part of that I don't like, but I realize it's true, because many franchisors have created this, and franchisees have created that, the remark that people will make, if this is a franchise, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Not going to be as good.
Yep. But it's
I don't like that part, but I realize that's part of what we're up against, and particularly with the lack of knowledge about franchising in the country and the world.
Well, I think it's just perception, and I think you have to let people know it's different, right? You have to kind of go out there and make the case for what you do to prove to people we may be a franchise, but doesn't mean every franchise operates the same.
Have you had brokers or any leads that have said, I don't like the name. I'm going to go invest in, I like painting, but I'll go invest in one of your competitors?
well, then that's where you should go.
Yeah.
Because if you don't like the name, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
You
You haven't
know,
had that
truthfully.
kind of resistance. Has there been resistance from brokers or?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I had more resistance in my own mind. Early on, I questioned the name, right? I really thought, well, am I not selling these because it's Richard's painting? Is it not the right thing? And the more and more I thought about it, and I said, it's not the name. It's just, you know, you need validation. You need all these things that help build the brand. But I had to, you know, I had to say to myself finally, I could be in and out painting, I could be brushstroke painting, I could be bullshit painting, whatever it might be. But Richard's painting means something to a lot of people, right? And so I think it resonates with a lot of people. And I love the comments on Facebook ads about, you don't look like Richard. How come your name is Michelle? Shouldn't this be Michelle's painting? Shouldn't this be, you know, whatever it might be? And so I love it actually gives us a little bit something that nobody else has.
How many markets are you in now? And you started using brokers just recently, I believe. So how has it changed? What are your total markets, total franchisees?
Total franchisees at the moment is 22. And, you know, we're all the way as far out west as Bellingham, Washington. We're in Michigan, Tennessee, Massachusetts, New Jersey, North Carolina, Florida, New Orleans. I think that's it. Yeah. So we're all over, which, you know, I that's what I really like about our business is that we don't, you know, if you're like a storefront or something like that, you know, you got to do, you know, searching for property and all these other things. With our business, so much of it is, we barely, we do a lot of over the, ever since COVID was probably the best thing to happen in franchising because, the virtual meetings and the virtual talking and all these things that we do nowadays, having to be present is not as important as maybe it was, 5 years ago. And so it's really helped us be able to be really involved with our franchisees without having to be there. So I think that part of it has really, really helped us, just like us having this conversation now. I have people who are doing something and FaceTiming me and saying, hey, what the ceiling is happening? What do I do? And so this technology that we have now has really helped our business.
Are the brokers responding, in your opinion, favorably to Richard's painting? Are they out there finding you buyers?
I don't want to be in trouble. So I'm going to say.
I don't believe that's true, Richard.
Yeah, right.
You don't strike me as a guy who skirts trouble.
What I want to say is watching what's going on in the world now in franchising. I think money drives a lot of things, right? And when brokers are getting paid, by franchise brands to really sell them and they get paid very, very well to sell them, they're going to lean in that direction. Our franchise, commitment is large in my mind, but it may not be, what others are paying. I mean, I hear people are paying almost the entire franchise fee to brokers. Okay. I will be out of business if I did that. So, I think it's relative to that. I think, just like anything, I think we've sold deals. There are people interested. It's just, how do you stand out in the crowd when you have people who are making so much money from these brands with the fear of missing out, where they got to sell and they're selling and they're selling. I'm in a situation where I don't even want to do that, to be honest. I don't want to have 50 locations in a year. We can't handle that, right? We don't want that. We just want to grow gradually. I just, but every time, you're on LinkedIn or anything else, and you're like, damn, they sold another one. Damn it, they sold another one. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing wrong? Right? It's not that, and so, yeah, I'm honest with myself to say, I know, everything I'm doing is not perfect, right? But you have to be aware of what else is going on. So there's other painting franchises and all these different things, and I just understand that what I'm paying out is relative to what I'm getting back, right? I feel like that's very relative. If I started offering twice as much to the broker, I'm pretty sure I'll sell more. I think the math is pretty simple. And so, but I'm just not willing to do that at the moment because I think it would hurt my business more than help it.
Yeah, Richard, you make a very good point. And I'm not sure you giving the entire franchise fee is going to make a difference for you. because you've got a lot of services businesses, which are going to be the same types of candidates that you are going to be going after, that they're offering 3-packs, 5-packs, and 10-packs.
Oh,
So now if you've got something that's $250,000 and the broker's going to get half of that, you can give your entire franchise fee away and it will make not a hill of beans difference. On the name, I'll say this. You get to be the Ruth's Chris Steakhouse of
Yes.
painting. Because a lot of people don't realize that Ruth's Chris is a franchise.
yes.
So that's a
I would love to be that. Trust me. A few more locations, but I would definitely love to be Ruth Chris for sure. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I listen. At the end of the day, you know, franchising has got me to this conversation today, right? Like when I first started this journey, I didn't know I'd be even important enough to even talk to anybody, right? You know, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't even know if I was going to sell one, let alone get to 22 and, you know, and continue to grow this brand. So I'm humbled in one way, but also I'm also competitive. I want to win, right? I like to win. But at the same time, I think sometimes losing is winning at the same time. So when you talk about these other franchise candidates, to be honest, anybody who wants to buy a 3, 5, 7, 10-pack is not going to be the person that's going to work for Richards Painting anyway, right? I don't think, you know, I'm not looking for those type of people who instantly think they need to have all, you know, that business to be a multimillionaire, right? Like that's what their thought process is. For us, I just want to change people's lives. I want them to make a good living. And if they can, you know, be really happy and want to be a franchisee for the rest of their lives, I mean, I feel like I've won.
You
Well,
have.
it's nice to know that you think we're important enough to talk to.
Yeah.
Well, today anyway.
Yeah.
That might change.
Like, all right. Well, that's a good place to end.
Yeah. That's enough of that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Richard. That was fun. Boo. That's terrific. That's great. Well, thank you very much. It's been very entertaining. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for following along and all your questions. And if we didn't get to any, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if you have any brokers out there who are interested in selling a really good franchise to your candidates, we'll be here ready to talk.
Well, Richard, let me tell you this before we go. That chat is on the event on LinkedIn, and you can go back and actually chat with everybody who asked a question right there. You know, even if you just go back and you say, thank you for being here today, but you can talk to them. You don't have to wait for them. They're already talking to you.
Because they're more important than we are.
Yes,
Yeah.
damn straight about that.
They're there for tomorrow.
There you go,
We'll
guys.
be there tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Thank you, everybody.